Hello, okay, for those of you returning to the channel, welcome back, and for those of you that are new here, that have just stumbled upon this video, then thank you for joining me, and welcome to my spoiler-filled review of supernatural horror Black Phone 2, written and directed by Scott Derrickson. He co-wrote it with a Christopher Robert Cargill, and I've been really looking forward to this movie. I was actually quite late in catching the first movie. I didn't actually watch it until late last year, and the movie was released in 21, and I really enjoyed it. I really liked the film, but for me, it worked beautifully as this standalone experience, as this standalone story. And so I was quite curious, I was quite intrigued by how they were going to continue this story when, with its sequel, once they announced it. I was like, oh yeah, great. We've got a sequel to a movie that I really liked. But at the same time, I was like, it's not a film, it's not a story where I felt like it really needed a sequel. But I'm still excited nonetheless. So, The Black Phone 2. It's set in October 1982, 4 years after Finney Blake killed the grabber. His sister Gwen begins experiencing vivid dreams about a series of murders that occurred at Alpine Lake Camp in 1957. In one dream, she receives a call from their late mother, Hope, who also had similar visions during the time of the murders. Determined to uncover the truth, Gwen convinces Finney and Ernesto, the brother of the late Robin Arellano, to visit the camp where Hope once worked as a teenager. When they arrive, a sudden blizzard traps them with only a few remaining staff members, forcing the trio to investigate the haunting connection between Gwen's dreams, their family's past, and the camp's dark history. So, when it comes to the first movie, I think they did a wonderful job at easing you into that supernatural element of the story while keeping the experience grounded. Allowing you to sort of remain immersed into the experience and, emotionally involved with the experience. And, it never sort of threw you out because all of a sudden it gets too out there or too, far-fetched, you could say. I feel like they were very smart in sort of how the narrative was crafted, in how they wrote that first movie, in how they eased you into that supernatural element. I thought it was very clever, and as a result, it remained a very grounded experience, a very gritty experience, and one that was emotionally charged. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed how they approached that movie and how they utilised the supernatural elements within that first movie. And with the sequel, they lean heavier into that supernatural element of the story, and I think that was a very smart move. I feel like it was very smart to kind of continue the story in the way in which they do with that supernatural element. I really liked the ideas. I found it to be incredibly intriguing and compelling, and there was just so much potential there with sort of the direction they were going. And like with the first movie, I feel like they do a really good job at, in that first 20 minutes, that first 20 to 30 minutes, into easing you into that supernatural element. And as a result, due to sort of how they bring the supernatural element to life within this movie, they again create an experience that remains grounded, that is gritty, that feels real. It never gets too sort of out there to the point where it just throws you out. And that is all down to the way in which they bring this story to life and that supernatural element. I loved how they used what I think is a Super 9 camera. I could be wrong, but I'm sure that is what I read in an interview. And I just loved how sort of the dreamlike sequences would sort of transition back into real time. And yeah, I just loved how they kind of just brought the story to life visually. And, even though it's familiar, because this movie overall did feel like a blend of Nightmare on Elm Street, Stranger Things, with Buffalo Bill thrown into the mix, it still felt fresh. And that is because I was invested with these characters' journeys, with these characters' stories. And there is a very human story here, right at the core of this experience, at the core of this film. There is an emotional current there. And that is why, along with the elements that I've already mentioned, is why I've remained locked in throughout this entire experience. There is a very real human story here where, you know, it allows you to sort of really be able to relate to what these characters are going through. There is an emotional current here where they're exploring themes around trauma, grief and loss, you know, struggling to confront your fears and attempting to overcome those fears. There is this big heart right in the middle of this story where in moments you feel that pulse and it does hit hard. It's very effective in those moments. And the reason why I say in moments is because unfortunately, it's not 100% effective at really delivering what I felt like this movie or this story could have. What they were aiming for with its story, with these characters' journeys, it's there, but unfortunately it isn't consistent. There isn't that sort of emotional momentum and energy that kind of just travels throughout the narrative, and you only really get it in moments. And I felt like the movie was kind of like that in many other elements or many other aspects, whether it be the writing, the performances. It was all quite inconsistent. And so for me as a whole, this experience was quite frustrating because there was so much that I admired about it, that I liked about it, but it didn't come together to create one consistent, satisfying experience for me. It is one that I liked a lot. Like, I really enjoyed it, but its problems is what stopped it from really sort of hitting a high, sort of hitting that same high that the first movie did for me. It's the human elements of this story, you know, the journey of this family, what they're going through, the loss that they've experienced, the trauma. You know, it's this aspect of the story that allowed me to remain engaged, that allowed me to remain locked in to this experience. And, you know, you will get these odd moments, like I said, where it does hit hard emotionally, and it's because of those moments where I was sort of I just remained locked in on this experience. And it's that human element of the story that allows this experience to remain grounded, even though, you know, it does get very, you know, out there when it comes to the supernatural aspect of its story. But I just felt like, for me personally, it was the execution of these ideas and story that just don't quite come together in a way that creates a consistent, emotionally charged, horrifying and chilling experience. The elements are there, but it's just quite clunky in its execution. It's almost at times, through the writing, you could almost sense that they were kind of struggling to find a way for this story to have a purpose, if that makes sense. Like, the ideas are all there, and that kind of very real human story, you know, with these characters, with his brother and sister and their father, you know, the elements are there, but how they all sort of came together within this 2-hour runtime, at times it just felt clunky, and at times it also kind of felt forced with what they were attempting here. There were two other major elements to this experience that didn't always work for me, that were quite inconsistent, I felt. And that was the writing and the performances. And I'll start with the writing. The writing at times was very heavy when it comes to exposition. And it felt quite unnatural in sort of how it was written. And that then aided with the performances. You would get these moments that kind of just felt very wooden and flat and robotic, like they were just reading, our characters were just reading from a script. And that's how it felt in moments. It just didn't quite feel natural at times in sort of when, you know, they're setting up sort of where our characters are at in life. You know, that kind of the first 20 minutes for me is when this was the most obvious in sort of that setup, even though I feel like they do a good job at easing you into that supernatural element again. A lot of that is down to sort of the visuals and sort of the ideas really with where they're going with this family. But when it came to the writing, when it came to the dialogue and the performances, I just had a very hard time buying into the performances. They just felt a little wooden. But then you would get the odd moment, and there were about 3 of them, 3, maybe 4 moments where it fucking floored me. And it's that pulse that I mentioned earlier on. You would get it, and it could be between brother and sister, or there'd be a moment. It's one of the very final moments in the movie, and it hits hard emotionally. And the reason why it hits hard emotionally is because everything that they are attempting to tell you with this story just comes out through the performance and through the writing. You know, the very elements of this experience that I have issues with. And it's in these moments with these characters, these sort of kind of very tender, somber moments where these characters are just exchanging dialogue, and, you know, they're having these conversations and they're opening up. And it is, you know, incredibly powerful. Mason Thames, who plays Finney, there's a moment with him where he's confronting his sister and his father. And it's an incredibly powerful moment. And it's powerful because of the performance within that moment. And I just remember sitting there thinking, whoa, like it's immersing me, it's swallowing me up within the moment because of the performance within this moment, and with how he's delivering the dialogue and just everything about this moment. It is incredibly powerful. There's also another scene with Madeline McGrew. In the end, it's literally one of the final scenes of the movie. And it is, again, powerful because of how she's bringing the character to life in that moment and in how she's delivering the lines. And so it's because of those moments that really did just allow me to sort of remain immersed, as well as with its ideas and in how they were approaching this story. But it was a very frustrating one because I just don't feel like the movie as a whole was really consistent with delivering the ideas and story that they were aiming for you. And do you know what? This could very well for me be one of those experiences that might grow on me over time. You know, this was just my first viewing, and I'm going into this experience with that kind of skepticism, you could say, and doubt in them delivering a sequel to that first movie that feels like it's earned, that feels like it has a purpose. Because I honestly felt like that first movie worked beautifully as a standalone experience. And so there was that element of skepticism from me. And so when I'm watching that first 20 to 30 minutes, maybe I am just being a little bit too harsh or just too nitpicky, maybe. I don't know. But it's the way it's just the way it came across to me at the time. Like, I don't feel like the writing was always on point, and I don't feel like the performances were always on point. But then there are moments in this movie where those performances truly come to life and just, for me anyway, swallowed me up into the experience even more and just immersed me into it even more and sort of just got me more invested into these characters' journeys. And so with all that being said, you know, with the issues that I had with this movie, I still had a good time. I liked it. I loved its ideas. I loved what they were attempting to do. And I loved how they were bringing this story to life from a visual perspective. You've got a great soundtrack by Scott Derrickson's son, Atticus Derrickson, a brilliant score here. I also loved how brutal this movie was. It doesn't hold back, and I was pleasantly surprised to see how far they did go with the violence in this movie. Again, kind of really adding to sort of the grittiness and to the immersion of this experience by not really holding back and also not showing too much either. And there are some real clever, smart, fun moments when it comes to the nightmare scenes and the violence that I absolutely admired. And yeah, I just really enjoyed being immersed within this story. I think they did so much right when it came to certain elements. And like I said, in moments, you know, it does floor you emotionally. But as a whole, it just wasn't quite consistent to create this kind of one whole, emotionally charged, horrifying, chilling ride. It all, by the end of it, even though you get those moments where it kind of really does hit hard emotionally, it still kind of felt flat looking back on it. And that is due to this clunkiness that's there. Like, I wouldn't say this was a messy movie, but it at times just felt a little forced, you could say, in sort of how they were setting this story up. Like, almost at times they were really trying hard to give us, or to give the sequel a reason to exist, if that makes sense. I mean, it's kind of like just a sensation that I was getting. But then again, it could just be that skepticism that I've had, sort of, you know, because I enjoyed that first movie so much, and because I was skeptical about how they would continue that story in a way that feels earned or would be clever. You know, maybe that plays a part into it, and maybe it's going to be one of those movies that will grow on me over time, because I did like it. There was a lot to like about this experience, and I do recommend it. I think there are many people are gonna have or enjoy this a hell of a lot more than me, even though I really did like this film. But I didn't come out of it thinking, wow, yeah, you know, that was a great sequel. It just struggled to sort of really bring those ideas and sort of what they were aiming for with the kind of sort of that human story to life in a way that felt consistent, that kind of felt focused, like I felt like it needed to. And so, yeah, that's enough rambling from me. They are my thoughts on Black Phone 2, and I will be giving Black Phone 2... So yeah, they're my thoughts on Black Phone 2, but what do you guys think? Have you seen it yet? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did you agree or disagree with anything I've said? Then please let me know in the comments below, and let's get a discussion going. And if you've made it this far into the video, then thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And if you want to watch future movie reviews from just some random Welsh geek rambling on, then please hit the subscribe button. It will mean an awful lot to me. My next reviews will be for The Roofman and Shelby Oaks, two movies that I'm really looking forward to. Shelby Oaks is going to be a special one because, you know, it's directed by Chris Stuckman, and like many, you know, like anyone on YouTube who does movie reviews and talks about film, I'm one of those many YouTubers or many people that were inspired by Chris Stuckman. You know, I've been watching Chris Stuckman for a very, very long time, and he is one of the many YouTubers that kind of really got me inspired to create my own channel, to get me talking about film to, you know, with like-minded people. And so I just think it's great that he's, you know, been able to have the opportunity to live out his dream, really, and, you know, and write and direct his very own feature film. And just another thank you, a massive thank you to everyone that has supported the channel, wherever it be liking, commenting and subscribing. It will always mean the world to me that so many of you do want to follow just some random Welsh geek ramble on about film and TV, but it does mean the world to me, and it means so much that so many of you do stick around and comment and just interact with my channel, with my videos. If there's anything that you would like to see me cover, whenever it be like a retro review or anything that I might have missed in the cinema, let me know below. Any video ideas, any top 10 ideas that you'd like to see me do, then let me know below. I do have an idea actually for a top 10, which I'm going to get around to filming in the next couple of weeks, and that is my top 10 movies that I am most embarrassed to admit that I've never watched before. Because there's a lot of them. There's a lot of movies, classic, iconic movies in cinema that I have never watched before, that I am embarrassed to admit I have never seen. And so, yeah, I think it'll be a fun, interesting video to do. And so, yeah, look, that's enough from me. Thank you all again for watching. I really do appreciate it. And I'll be catching you guys soon.